If perfectionism has you feeling stuck in a rut of anxiety and stress, watch this video until the end because I'll be sharing the very same tools I used myself to stop getting paralyzed by perfectionism. Just like QAnon, FTX, and bottled water, perfectionism is a total scam. I'm Laura Brown, and not only am I a therapist who knows a thing or two about the pitfalls of perfectionism, I'm also a perfectionist in recovery myself. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the exact same tools that have helped me break free from the paralysis caused by perfectionism and actually become way better at achieving meaningful goals. Make sure you watch until the end because these tips are game changers. If you really think about it, perfectionism is totally ridiculous in a few different ways. First, it assumes that anything can actually be perfect. Like, guys, we already have a Beyonce. Who are we kidding? That ship has sailed. Then, like 80% of the time when you're trying to achieve perfection, you actually just end up paralyzed by the fear of not being able to achieve perfection. So, you fail, which is definitely not achieving perfection. And then let's say you're one of the lucky few who are able to actually resist paralysis. That's not awesome either, because you're probably so stressed out and overwhelmed with the fear of underperforming that you're not exactly a joy to be around, and you're aging at a pace so rapidly that your hairdresser and esthetician's eyeballs turn into dollar signs every time you walk in the door in a futile effort to battle the gray hairs and wrinkles your anxiety is causing. Let's stop doing that, shall we? Before we dive into the deep end of how to stop doing perfectionism, let's take a moment to talk about exactly what perfectionism is and why it even exists. Perfectionism isn't just having high standards or trying to do a good job at things. It's actually a kind of fear or anxiety around not being good enough, which we try to compensate for by striving for perfection. A simple way to expose perfectionism is to ask yourself the question, am I doing this out of joy or out of fear? Joy can absolutely motivate you to do the very best that you can, to the point where you end up putting loads of effort into the things you do. That's generally a good thing, most of all because you're likely to feel a deep sense of satisfaction when all is said and done. On the other hand, it's pretty clear that you're acting from a place of fear when you feel stressed out and full of anxiety, particularly around the thought of not doing good enough and other people judging you for what you do. The two most common responses to this fear are avoidance and going hard in the paint. Perfectionists avoid doing things because if you're not doing a thing, you can't fail or underperform, can you? Well, not exactly. This strategy, if you want to think of it like that, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, which usually results in all kinds of shame and the sense that your fear has just been proven right. And going hard in the paint isn't actually any better because you feel consumed by the constant fear of underperforming. And operating at 110% capacity is not sustainable long term. All this is to say that perfectionism is neither sustainable nor attainable, so it really isn't a viable way to deal with the insecurity or fear of judgment that drives it. If perfectionism is really just an excuse and futility, why the heck do we do it? The driving force behind perfectionism is the very same thing behind many of the issues us humans struggle with. The longing to belong and the fear of rejection and exclusion. Way back in the day, we would have been toast if the group we belonged to decided that we weren't good enough and kicked our little asses out of the cave. Group belonging was once the foundation of the hierarchy of needs because the OG humans needed to have that base covered in order to have other essential needs met, like food and shelter. Even though it's been a minute since normal life looked like an episode of Survivor on steroids, we haven't yet lost the evolutionary drive to strive for belonging and avoid exclusion and rejection at all costs. We have that to thank for many of the social anxieties people commonly deal with, including perfectionism. So what the heck do you need to do to overcome perfectionism? Because it's driven by emotion, you need to have a good understanding of where the emotion is coming from. All feelings are informed by perspective. So what is the perspective at the heart of your perfectionism? For a lot of people, it's the idea that mistakes are a sign of inadequacy, and inadequacy means you're not good enough, which means you could find yourself with a one-way ticket to rejection town. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it sucks. The only good brunch spot has really snobby servers, and unlike where I live, the liquor store employees never ID me. Come on! Why must they deny me the simple pleasure of suggesting that there's a chance that I'm under the age of 19? Next, If you really want to put perfectionism in its place, you need to be able to identify the cost that it imposes on you personally. This is important because it can serve as motivation to actually give that shit up. Does it lead you to procrastinate and avoid taking action on things because you're afraid of making mistakes or failing? Does it have you doing double or overtime to ensure that everything you do is meticulous, leaving you feeling exhausted and like there's no time for fun or relaxation? Those are two super common ways that perfectionism shows up in people's lives. But maybe it looks a little different for you. Let us know in the comments what your version of perfectionism looks like. But either way, it probably comes with a very high price tag with very little reward, making it not at all worth it. It's like paying Gucci prices for that Lululemon bag you're rocking because you've been misled to believe that you need to do that to keep the other mummies at your kid's school from throwing you shade in the parking lot. You don't actually need to do that to keep that from happening, and now you're having frozen waffles for dinner for a month to recoup the cost. If you can understand where the emotion behind your perfectionism comes from, and you know the cost that it poses to you, next you need to poke some holes in perfectionism's logic. If left to do its thing, it would have you believe that you need to be perfect in order to be good enough. But is that actually true? It might feel scary to challenge this idea, but I bet it's a bunch of bullcrap. Do you have any people in your life who make mistakes? If so, how do you feel about them? Do you see them as human beings who are fallible by their very nature, and who you can appreciate despite their imperfections? If you're a reasonable individual, and I bet you are, you probably extend plenty of grace to others. So, do you think it's likely that you're the lone, decent, nice person in a sea of judgmental assholes? Call me a naive optimist, but I highly doubt that. I think most people are fair-minded and compassionate, and are more than willing to look past other people's shortcomings and see the good they bring to that world. On top of that, perfectionism would have you think that you need to overperform on everything in order to be seen as adequate. Not only is that utterly exhausting to even think about, it too is almost certainly untrue. There is such thing as good enough, and it usually falls somewhere way below whatever you believe is the best. If you're in the market for a new car, does it have to be Bugatti or nothing? Or will a Subaru do just as well at getting you to work, while also being able to do other fun things? Like eat? So raise an eyebrow at the ideas that perfectionism would lead you to believe, because they are almost certainly not accurate. The hardest step to take if you want to truly retire from your career in perfectionism is actually giving yourself permission to be imperfect. I get it. Perfection isn't a hobby that you're doing for a good time. It's a futile and unnecessary way of trying to avoid rejection and exclusion. You evolved from primitive human beings who absolutely needed to belong to survive. So the thought of being seen as not good enough feels scary as hell. If you want to stop feeling so anxious about all of this, you need to convince that fearful part of yourself that it's safe to make mistakes and perform at like 70 to 80% instead of 110. Part of you probably feels like hyperventilating and puking in your hat at the thought of not being a perfectionist, but if you don't challenge yourself in this way, you can't realistically expect anything to change. The aim of the game here is to come to terms with the fact that it can be safe to be imperfect, and that's going to feel super uncomfortable. But guess what? The more you challenge those old ideas, the easier it will be to do more of that, and the less anxious and uncomfortable you'll feel at the thought of making mistakes or failing. To make it easier to challenge yourself to be imperfect, come up with a little mantra that you can repeat to yourself that could sound like, perfection isn't actually possible. No one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Or, I'm good enough even though I'm not perfect. And if you're one of the many people who struggle to take action because of perfectionism, try telling yourself taking action is the only way to improve. Nobody's a pro when they're new at something, or everyone needs to struggle before they get better at things. This is all about bringing yourself back down to earth and striving for standards that are actually realistic. Like anything to do with personal growth and mental health, the process of change takes time. Be patient with yourself and be consistent with your efforts to challenge perfectionism. And just like me, you can be a recovering perfectionist. If this video has been helpful, give your girl a like and subscribe to Better Halves for more mental health content to remind yourself that you are good enough. Until the next upload, take good care. Bye-bye.